one thing when I do courses, kind of connecting Kabbalah into psychotherapy training courses, and the tree of life in the Kabbalah system has 3 basic triangles to it, which lots of different connections and things. But it's, the 3 triangles are spirit, soul, and personality. But then you can make lots of different correspondences out of that, and one way of looking at those 3 levels is that well, just to give them names, the principle or principles behind what you're doing, and then the relationship, and then the techniques or methods you might use. So I think one thing that's important in a training is being able to include all those 3 levels. That yes, you know, if you're training people, they need to know how to practice. They need methods and techniques, and I think certainly not all, but should be. Most training sort of emphasise the importance of the relationship. So we've got if I go back to those correspondences, we've got the personality and the soul parts of the whole model in there. But it's also important to include the principles as well. What is, or maybe not. Well, yes, the principles, but even behind that, the principle, the oneness, the one thing that's there. That's the composer, the conductor, the orchestra again in another way. So I think you know, on that, some sort of, you know, talking about the ethics and the what underpins a training. I think that's important to make sure all that's there. And then if we get to, I mean, I'll tell you what's coming to as triangles will come up quite strongly. I mean, it's like when people are doing practices, doing practicums in their trainings. Is it practicums or practica or
yes,
whatever?
Yes,
those things they do. Yeah, it's very common in trainings for people to sit in 3s doing that. You know, there's the person who's practicing their therapeutic techniques, and there's the person that's pretending to be a client for them, and there's the person that's sort of sitting there in the triad being the witness observer role. And I think it's important for, well, I think people often, my experience is people need to be reminded that role isn't, I mean, you know, people, the trainer might say, oh, you know, when you're in that 3rd place there, it's not about making judgments, it's about, you know, watching what happens and being able to feedback, and all those things that are important to say to the person. But they're more about the kind of personality and the relationship, the techniques and the relationship aspect of it. I think it's important to recognise and to help people recognise that role when they're sitting there, that is something that's going to be vitally important in their therapeutic work as well. It's not just, hey, it's not my turn now, they're having their turn and I'm sitting here, but actually, in some ways, that's perhaps the most important.
That's really fascinating what you're saying, and actually I guess, you know, maybe in that there's, you know, around the significance that's given to the role of the witness observer, and actually what that might mean also in terms of almost from the spiritual practice perspective, like you know, who and what is observing, and but just the kind of qualities that is, you know. That's really interesting, actually. And do you have more thoughts on that? I mean, I think that's really, you know, like in terms of what one might draw out of that in terms of, you know, in terms of training for students, because I'm really kind of quite taken by that.
I think I've been aware of that before, but of course when you're being interviewed about something or talking about it in this way and specifically focusing on it, it sometimes becomes clearer, doesn't it, what you're looking for. I think, I agree with you. I think that is, I just said it, but now I'm thinking about it.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, I guess the other obvious thing, seems to me obvious anyway, is people when they're training are anxious. And I think it was Harry Sullivan, American psychologist, said it might be from Jung, I'm not sure. I think it's from Harry Sullivan. Anyway, it's a great quote. The therapeutic process is when two people are sitting in the room together and one of them is slightly more anxious than the other.
Right.
Well, perhaps the mindfulness, non-dual sort of approach is sort of saying in a way, well, that's what makes you the one that's slightly less anxious of the two. Because in training it is a very anxious process. I think it's important. Well, I'm not saying I want to go in with my clients and be, shaking with anxiety and oh God, but to allow some level of that anxiety rather than try and sort of stop it in some way is an important part of it, and one has to be mindful of that, otherwise it's going to take you away from really being present. I think what you said before about once you start putting these things into words, it can be difficult because the words aren't there. And so actually, in a practical training sense, I think I could sit with some therapy trainees and I could say that, and they would perhaps understand the words of what I'm saying in their own ways, however. But to actually take that on, I think I'm not even sure you can do that in a training. I think maybe that only happens once you're actually out in the world practicing. Maybe. I think it's quite hard. I think that's true of lots of things. I sometimes say to people in trainees that you getting your diploma at the end isn't the end of the training. I mean, that's obvious anyway. But you're kind of moving on to another level when you're back to where you started, beginner's mind sort of stuff. Really. You have to let go of all the ideas and things, and then one finds one's own particular way of being with people and style of therapy.